A girl is reading an article about a hero called the Golden Man. He is described as a brilliant golden light illuminating the city, protecting New York. People praised him, calling him strong and great. The girl with green eyes and red hair handed the newspaper to a boy. The girl asked if he remembered the Golden Man. The boy looked confused. His hair was disheveled, and in front of him was a yellow outfit. He was wearing a hospital uniform and insisted he knew nothing about the Yellow Man. The girl explained that a large fire had broken out last night, burning down a factory. However, there were no casualties. Even a child trapped inside was rescued by the Golden Man. News of the incident spread everywhere. Some talk shows even speculated that the Golden Man himself might have started the fire to attract attention and create a spectacle. The girl and 3 other members questioned the boy about the incident, but he couldn't remember anything. He held the Golden Man's helmet, staring at it as if it were the first time he'd ever seen it. Everyone around was confused. It turned out he was the Golden Man, but he had lost his memory after the incident. He tried to remember, but they advised him not to stress too much and to rest. Later, a girl named Blues stayed to take care of him. While the others were leaving, I wished you a speedy recovery. They are worried about the future of the country when there is no one left to protect the people. Blues introduced herself to him, saying that she would stay by his side. He looked at her and asked about the hero. They had discussed this topic before. Blues confirmed that he was asking about the Golden Man, and he nodded. She told him that since what happened last night, the Golden Man has disappeared. He mused, observing that his memory seemed to be fading away as well. Blues looked at him in surprise. Then she asked about his injury and if he was in pain, but he reassured her that he was fine. She suggested they go out together to enjoy a normal day, and they began to prepare to leave. When stepping down from a large building, the boy looked astonished, as if he were seeing everything for the first time. He remarked how convenient it was to be able to use the elevator to get down from such a tall building. Blues smiled and told him that this was the Golden Man's secret base. Hearing this, he asked if she worked there. Blues explained that they were a team, working together to support the Golden Man. She introduced the rest of the group. Blues was a mechanic, Walk was the coach, Reach was the secretary, and the professor, whose real name no one knew, was their commander. The boy thanked Blues for taking care of him. Then he asked what was outside the base. Blues smiled and said that outside was the beautiful city of New York, where the Golden Man was protecting. He remarked that the base looked like an ordinary building. Then they went for a walk around the city together. Blues took him to many different places, and he interacted with many people, even playing with small children. They stopped at a shop, and the shopkeeper teased Blues, saying it was rare to see her with a boyfriend. It made her blush. She quickly told the boy to wait a moment and then left for a short while. Meanwhile, he chatted with the shop owner. The owner remarked that Blues was a little strange but never boring, adding that he must be worried about not having his memory. The boy thought about it, realizing that Blues was trying his best to support him and make him feel comfortable, which impressed him. When the Blues returned, they bought ice cream together. He looked around and remarked that the city was amazing. Blues smiled, agreed, and said that she loved the place too. He expressed his gratitude for her presence and asked if she was worried about her job. She reassured him not to worry about it. Blues said that her only job was to support the Golden Man. The boy thought for a moment. Then he asked that if there was a hero, then there must also be a villain. Blues nodded, explaining that yes, there are villains like monsters, superheroes, and even psychopaths. He reasoned that if the Golden Man was gone, villains might appear. Blues sighed, agreeing that this was indeed the problem. The entire city was in danger, but no one knew that the Golden Man had disappeared. She expressed hope that the Golden Man would return soon, along with the boy's memories. But then she fell silent, realizing she had probably said too much. After finishing his ice cream, the boy asked if he could have another one. Blues warned him that eating too much could give him a stomachache. He laughed, saying he'd eat another one, then another, and then another just to be sure. Meanwhile, Blues worried that if they indulged him with too much ice cream, they might get themselves into trouble. At that very moment, a few children walked by, and the boy bought ice cream for all of them, making them cheer with joy. Blues looked at him, and she thought he was very kind. Then she burst out laughing when she realized she would be the one paying for all the ice cream. Unexpectedly, a sign fell from above. The boy reacted incredibly quickly, pulling Blues out of danger. Looking up, she saw a villain standing high above watching them. The boy turned to her and asked what they should do now that a bad guy had appeared. Blues insisted they needed to return to base to deal with an important matter. When they returned, he gave her an ice cream. and he said he held it for her when she almost dropped it. She took it somewhat surprised, while the boy wondered how he could be strong enough to save the Blues. He looked down at his hands, astonished by his own strength. Meanwhile, in the city, a long-haired, sunglasses-wearing villain, known as Dr. Centipede, loudly proclaims that he will defeat the Golden Man. At the base, the entire team gathered to watch the video of the incident and quickly identified the villain. They explained to the boy that Dr. Centipede was the sworn enemy of the Golden Man. He was always obsessed with studying the hero's combat data, constantly adjusting himself to counter him. Everyone was worried, unsure how to deal with him, while the Golden Man hadn't returned. They noticed that Dr. Centipede was openly challenging and demanding the hero's appearance. At that moment, the boy unexpectedly asked if he could confront him, then confidently asserted that he was strong enough to do so. Blues was silent for a moment, but deep down she believed he was the only one who could confront the villain. The boy's determination surprised everyone. They were not only surprised by his unwavering attitude, but Blues continued to speak confidently about him, asserting that it didn't matter whether he had amnesia or injuries, because he was the Golden Man. As if swept away by her fervent belief, the truth inadvertently slipped from her lips, surprising him. Everyone stared at her in astonishment, their eyes wide with surprise. Secretary Reach, unable to contain his curiosity, asked if he had found any clues about his identity. The boy, the Golden Man, hesitated for a moment, then admitted that he himself had suspected it. He realized that his amnesia occurred precisely at the time the Golden Man disappeared. He couldn't remember anything specific about his past self, but deep down, he felt he might be the Golden Man. The professor, who always observed everything with a keen eye, remarked that logically everything made sense. Blues noticed his hesitation and she continued to encourage him. She said that even though he felt conflicted about his identity, then you are still the only one strong enough to confront the villain. The professor remained skeptical. He wasn't entirely sure whether the Golden Man was ready to face this challenge. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the villain's terror continues to spread. Hovering in midair, his enormous, centipede-like tentacles spread out. Dr. Centipede laughs, his laughter echoing through the streets. Mesmerized by the beauty of New York City, he declares that he never tires of gazing at the billion-dollar nightscape. Looking down at the brightly lit skyscrapers, his eyes gleam with admiration. He insisted that the city was called that for a reason. However, no matter how magnificent the city's lights might be, he believed that the brightest and greatest star, the true heart of its light, was Gibayam. It was none other than the Golden Man. The villain is obsessed with the Golden Man, eager, almost desperate, to meet him in person. At the base, the team members helped the Golden Man put on his costume. They knew this was a decisive moment and there was no turning back. As the final preparations were complete, they warned that once the battle began, all communication would be cut off. They would be unable to support or guide him throughout the fight. With everything ready, the Golden Man took a deep breath and stepped outside. After what felt like an eternity, he finally arrived at his destination. There, he confronted the ruthless villain head-on. The villain activated Manner Mode, a special mode that promised to keep the destruction under control and ensure the city remained intact after the battle. A tense atmosphere prevailed, invisible waves of energy seemingly sweeping across the sky as the Golden Man confronted Dr. Centipede. He directly named the villain, criticizing him for causing chaos in the city and putting countless lives at risk. Dr. Centipede merely gave a sinister smile, then scoffed, "Oops, it's my fault. Sorry." His tone turned mocking as he remarked that the Golden Man was more talkative than usual today, in contrast to his previous quietness. With a sarcastic tone, he casually stated that he liked the change, even displaying a distorted admiration for his rival. His smile grew even more sinister as he tilted his head provocatively and suggested that the battle was about to begin. Dr. Centipede warned the Golden Man, saying he would use his centipede-like arms to hang him to death. He claimed that his obsession with the Golden Man was the reason he had to kill him. His sinister grin widened, revealing sharp teeth, and the fight officially began. At the base, the team monitored the battle remotely, their faces tense with the perilous situation. Reach, worried, asked if anyone believed the Golden Man had a chance of winning. She pointed out that Dr. Centipede was incredibly powerful, making her feel uneasy. The professor nodded in agreement, acknowledging that the villain was indeed very strong. However, he seemed puzzled, wondering what had given Dr. Centipede such tremendous power. Reach explained that she had studied the Golden Man data very carefully, and she hinted that Dr. Centipede might know more than they thought. Dr. Centipede opened the battle with astonishing ferocity, charging straight at the Golden Man and pushing him back with immense force. He taunted him, confidently boasting that he knew everything, and ordered him to retreat immediately. The Golden Man remained unfazed. He took a step forward, and he threw a powerful punch, striking Dr. Centipede directly in the face. At the base, the team was left speechless with astonishment. They couldn't believe his audacious act. They cheered excitedly. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the true beginning of the battle. The Golden Man realizes that amnesia can be a hidden blessing. The Golden Man no longer feels bound by his past. The letter that Dr. Centipede stole from him didn't give him the advantage he had hoped for. Meanwhile, Dr. Centipede grew increasingly frustrated, wondering why the data he had collected wasn't giving him an advantage. He began to doubt himself, feeling that failure might be inevitable. In desperation, he launched another attack, but the Golden Man quickly climbed to the top of a tall building. Dr. Centipede was determined not to lose sight of his opponent, who stretched out his centipede-like arms and frantically tried to grab him. His attack shattered countless windows, sending shards of glass raining down onto the street. The Golden Man immediately spoke up, warning him to stop vandalizing the buildings. Dr. Centipede coldly replied that as long as no lives were lost, the destruction didn't matter. He chuckled, adding that his benefactors would take care of the repairs. The Golden Man hesitated and was confused, wondering who these benefactors were. Was Dr. Centipede referring to his own crew, or was there another force behind him? The battle dragged them both inside a building. Where Dr. Centipede started throwing chairs, he threw tables and all sorts of things at the Golden Man in a fit of rage. The Golden Man attempts to minimize damage, catching and counterattacking by throwing objects back with incredible accuracy. Dr. Centipede has stalled. He realized that the Golden Man's fighting style had changed. It is no longer as sophisticated or technical as it used to be. Now, the Golden Man's fighting style was wild, instinctive, almost primitive. He gradually realized that all the data he had ever collected was now useless. Doubt began to creep into his mind. Was this really the Golden Man? That moment of hesitation cost Dr. Centipede dearly. With a burst of intense energy, the Golden Man unleashed his most powerful blow, knocking Dr. Centipede to the ground. The violent collision stunned him, his eyes wide with astonishment at his opponent's sudden surge of power. He couldn't understand. Where did this newfound strength come from? How could the Golden Man surpass all the limits he had ever studied? Dr. Centipede is now clearly showing signs of panic. He warned that he would unleash his full power. With nothing left to hold back, he resolved to rise to his feet. His eyes blazed with fighting spirit. He lunged forward with terrifying speed, all his monstrous legs propelling him ahead. He was poised for a decisive clash to take down the Golden Man. Dr. Centipede's long limbs formed a blur of motion, millions of his legs poised to strike. In a desperate attempt, he used all his legs to try and subdue and overpower the Golden Man. However, the Golden Man reacted with incredible strength and precision, shattering Dr. Centipede's limbs one by one. His movements were decisive and unwavering. With one final punch, the Golden Man sent Dr. Centipede flying. He fell to the ground, motionless, utterly defeated. His once powerful legs were now shattered and useless. Lying there, breathing heavily, Dr. Centipede conceded defeat with a moment of unexpected humility. He praised the Golden Man, admitting that he had indeed witnessed the glory of New York. Surrounded by a brilliant golden light, Dr. Centipede declared that he had no regrets, even in defeat. As his strength dwindled, he began to slide out of a nearby shattered window. But just before Dr. Centipede met his certain death, the Golden Man quickly grabbed his hand, preventing him from falling. From base, the entire team watched in amazement. They were stunned by the Golden Man's unexpected compassion. They were surprised not only by his victory, but also by his refusal to let Dr. Centipede die, despite all that he had done. Dr. Centipede was shocked and confused, demanding to know why the Golden Man had saved him after everything he had done. The Golden Man's answer was simple and sincere. He didn't want Dr. Centipede dead regardless of his past. This response only further enraged his enemy. Dr. Centipede's voice was bitter, as he declared that the Golden Man had not only taken away his light, but also his self-respect. He insisted that his actions were not easily forgiven. With bitterness, he recounted his crimes, how he plotted, set traps, and manipulated situations to put the Golden Man at a disadvantage. He admitted to taking hostages and being willing to endanger civilian lives for the sake of victory. But despite all these crimes, the Golden Man still chose to save him. The irony of the situation did not escape his thoughts, and shame mixed with anger was evident on his face. Dr. Centipede adamantly declares that he will never let the Yellow Man forget his past crimes, believing he is responsible for everything. However, the Yellow Man calmly reveals that he has forgotten everything, including Dr. Centipede's crimes. And he chose to forgive him. This statement stunned Dr. Centipede even more. The Golden Man explained that even if he remembered everything, he would still act the same way. He would still save him. Dr. Centipede's rage subsided as this truth sank into his thoughts. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of remorse appeared on his face. While they were still hovering outside the building, their conversation continued. Dr. Centipede was torn between gratitude and lingering hatred. Below, the crowd watched in astonishment, cameras raised high, capturing every word and action. The people cheered loudly, shouting the name of the Golden Man, hailing him as a hero. The moment culminates when the Golden Man finally lets go of Dr. Centipede. He fell down, but instead of crashing onto the sidewalk, he landed safely on a rescue sheet that the escort team had prepared below. The fall was cushioned, and Dr. Centipede was unharmed. The police immediately approached and arrested him. The crowd erupted in cheers. The sound echoed throughout the night. They praised the Golden Man for his bravery, because he defended not only the city but also his enemies. The Golden Man's communication device reconnected with the team, and they excitedly congratulated him on his victory, their voices filled with relief and pride. The professor suggested ordering pizza to celebrate this hard-fought victory. The Golden Man nodded, appreciating everyone's support, and then went to take a shower. As he left, the team gradually relaxed, the tension slowly dissipating as they reflected on the events that had unfolded. Reach admitted that she had been uncertain about the outcome of the battle. The professor encouraged everyone to relax, take a moment to breathe, and regain their composure after the intense fight. However, as the conversation progressed, they couldn't help but think about the bigger questions that remained unanswered. Who exactly is the man they call the Golden Man? Where does he come from, and how did he acquire that extraordinary power? Walk reveals a disturbing truth. They lied to the Golden Man. They convinced him that he was the Golden Man, solely to gain his cooperation, even though they had no evidence to confirm his identity. Now they had more questions than answers. The group went back to examine the events of the previous night, trying to piece together the missing fragments of this mystery. They recalled the fire at the factory, a chaotic blaze that threatened countless lives. The Golden Man initially rushed inside to rescue a trapped child. After safely getting the child out, he returned to the burning building. It was at that moment that they lost contact with him. All they saw was the video footage from outside, the child being rescued, then the Golden Man disappearing in the flames. The person who appeared next was the man currently wearing the Golden Man costume. They found him unconscious, his body clad in the costume of the real Golden Man. But he couldn't remember who he was, nor did he know why or how he was there. When he woke up, he had no memory of his past. This man, a mysterious figure, had no past, only the title they had bestowed upon him, the Golden Man. The Blues argue that despite all doubts, the current Golden Man has proven himself to be a true hero. His power far surpassed anything they had ever known, showing that he was no longer simply an imposter. However, the professor remained skeptical. He insisted that they needed to find out more about the man's true identity. There is a disturbing possibility that the original Golden Man returned to the factory to confront this stranger. And perhaps he failed. Is it possible that the current Golden Man has defeated him and taken his suit? If so, who is the man standing between them, really? What is his true purpose? Is he truly a hero or merely a villain lurking right before their eyes? Blues confessed that when she told him he was the Golden Man, she had hoped that would inspire him. She wanted him to believe he was a hero, so that he would act like someone who could be trusted and relied upon. The professor admitted that, at this point, they had no choice but to rely on him to protect the city. Meanwhile, they must continue their search for the true Golden Man, hoping to uncover the truth. He stressed that they needed to monitor him very carefully. The memories of the new Golden Man, they were a mystery. They all knew that if his memory returned, no one could predict how he would react or what he would do with his incredible powers. This uncertainty hung over them like a shadow, casting doubt on the future. They understood the importance of the matter. The city's peace depended on the man they called the Golden Man. Whether fate, accident, or deception, his actions, choices, and lost memories now held the key to the city's future. All they could do was hope he would become the hero they needed. Then, all the team members gathered, sitting together in the common area. The Golden Man returned, looking refreshed after getting ready. As he entered, the professor called out his name, Murabashi. He paused for a moment, stunned, then asked if that was his real name. The professor calmly confirmed that it was indeed his name. Though still confused, Murabashi admitted that even with his amnesia, the name still felt familiar. It was almost true, but he couldn't understand why. He confessed that it was strange to have a name that evoked a connection to himself, even though he remembered nothing else about the past. The professor gently asked if it was all right if people continued to call him Murabashi, since he didn't remember any other names. Murabashi nodded, reassuring them that it was fine. He didn't mind at all. Meanwhile, Murabashi began exercising on the treadmill, running with clear determination. The professor pondered silently, knowing that Murabashi wasn't his real name, but decided not to reveal it yet. Then he turned to the team members. He announced that this man would replace Murabashi-kun, who had tragically disappeared in the earlier fire. He explained that the man they found that night at the scene of the incident seemed to possess incredible potential. Therefore, he will take over the responsibilities left behind by Murabashi-kun. As the professor said these words, Murabashi continued his high-intensity training session at Golden Man's gym. Curious about his physical capabilities, the professor asked the fitness trainer how many kilograms Murabashi was currently lifting. The coach was clearly impressed, noting that Murabashi was lifting weights far exceeding even the former Golden Man, who used to be their strongest member. The professor found this very interesting, but wisely decided not to rush into Murabashi's lost memories. After all, there was a possibility he could be the villain in this story, and if that were true, a battle might ensue. Blues worried, wondering if that were really the case, how they could possibly confront someone with such extraordinary power. The professor acknowledged her concerns, but he insisted that they needed to investigate what actually happened that night. The night Murabashi was found, if they wanted to understand who he really was, they needed to find the truth. The professor assigned Reach the task. She will accompany Murabashi, guiding him through the entire process of the Golden Man, helping him adapt to his new role. Reach agreed and went to meet Murabashi. He reassured her, assuring her that even without memories of the past, he would not be a burden to anyone. With unwavering confidence, he declared himself the Golden Man, trusting in his heroic instincts and the deeply ingrained ideals of justice, even as his memories remained hazy. Yet, Reach remained skeptical. She suspected that his belief might be just a facade, but chose to keep those doubts to herself. She wanted to observe Murabashi more, curious about his true nature. Blues asked the professor for permission to accompany her, and he readily agreed, trusting her judgment. Meanwhile, Reach was still thinking about Murabashi's past. She asked Blues about how she funded her expensive field surveys. Then, Murabashi, now clad in the legendary Golden Man costume, calmly walked down a bustling New York City street. He interacted with people, and their faces lit up at his sight. Children pointed and giggled, recognizing the familiar figure of their hero. Adults eagerly gathered around him, happily taking selfies with him. He continued walking, weaving through the crowd. Murabashi stopped to help an elderly couple cross the street, demonstrating friendliness and thoughtfulness. Observing from a distance, Blues noticed that Murabashi seemed naturally sociable, a trait contrary to what they had anticipated. Turning to Reach, she remarked that perhaps they had been overly concerned about whether he would fit in. However, Reach remained unconvinced. She expressed her concerns, asserting that placing trust in someone with no clear past, someone who couldn't even remember their name or life story, was too risky. Blues acknowledged her concerns but reminded her that they currently have no better option. The two decided to sit down at a nearby cafe, continuing to observe Murabashi from a distance. They sipped their coffee, watching how he interacted with the crowd. Meanwhile, they talked about the difficulty of placing trust in someone who had completely lost their memory. However, they also had to admit that Murabashi possessed exceptional skills and abilities, which were undeniable. After leaving the cafe, they passed a building that was still under renovation. Murabashi stopped, looked up at the building, and asked if this was the place that had been damaged in a battle with some doctor. Reach confirmed that it was, but quickly reassured him that he didn't need to worry about the repair costs. Reach explained that the professor was responsible for managing all financial matters, and they had prepared for any losses that might occur during the missions. She revealed that the professor is the head of the Taylor Foundation, one of the world's largest and most influential corporations with virtually unlimited resources. The Taylor Foundation has invested heavily in the city's construction industry, providing advanced technology and a well-trained workforce to ensure that any infrastructure damage can be repaired quickly. She encouraged Murabashi to focus on his work, not to worry about issues like repair costs. Reach's tone gradually became more enthusiastic as she reminded him that human life is irreplaceable. Reach excitedly declared that protecting the people of New York was their ultimate mission. That is the responsibility of the Golden Man. At that moment, she noticed something unusual in the alley behind Murabashi. A group of teenagers appeared to be fighting, and Murabashi immediately rushed to intervene. With an impressive move, he appeared decisively, causing the troublemakers to panic and flee. He quickly rescued a boy who had been caught in the middle of the fight. Shortly afterwards, Blues and Reach arrived. They warned him about how to handle the situation. They reminded us that while it's necessary to confront those who make mistakes, we must also remember that they are still human beings. They emphasized the need to avoid causing serious injury or harm to others. Murabashi listened to their advice and nodded in agreement. He explained that he only intended to warn them, and that his actions were meant to create drama, not violence. Reach was not convinced by his vague explanation, stating frankly that she could not trust such unclear motives. She emphasized that gentleness and restraint were paramount, especially given his superior strength. To put him to the test further, they sent him to a different situation where a young girl was being harassed. Murabashi arrived just in time, intervened, and frightened the attacker away without resorting to violence. From a distance, Reach and the Blues observed closely. They noticed that Murabashi's interaction with the public was very different from how he behaved with the team. This led them to discuss his strange behavior, with Reach continuing to express his suspicions. Reach tells Blues that a hero with no memory of his past and whose reliability is questionable can only be expected to operate within certain limits. She worries that his mysterious past and unclear motives could become a long-term threat. Blues listens but maintains a cautious optimism, recognizing that despite the uncertainties, they have no other choice for the time being. At a cafe, the professor and Reach meet to discuss the Golden Man. Reach asks the professor if he has any new information about the Golden Man. The professor replies that he has no information yet, as the investigation has only just begun that day. The professor took a sip of tea, then asked Reach about Murabashi's behavior. Reach remarked that he was quite charming and worked very well, but she was still worried about the overwhelming amount of power he possessed. With a voice full of concern, she asked the professor what he thought about Murabashi becoming a hero. The professor set his teacup down. He calmly stated that there really was no other option. Reach felt disappointed and disheartened by his response, realizing it was the same old answer and she wasn't sure how many more times she could bear to hear it. Meanwhile, Blues watched Murabashi's efforts and secretly admired him. She admitted that observing him work brought her joy. Murabashi smiled and thanked her, then remarked that Reach often scolded him more than she praised him. They both quietly observed the peaceful city. Murabashi wondered if the Golden Man was really necessary, given the current lack of villains. Blues was annoyed and immediately retorted, emphasizing that even occasional threats were too dangerous for the police to handle on their own. And that's why heroes are indispensable, Murabashi pondered, admitting that amnesia was already difficult to accept, but finding purpose in life after that is even more difficult. He was grateful to be chosen as a hero, but he also realized that people often talk about change, but find it very difficult to actually take action. His viewpoint surprised the Blues. She suggested they both go for a walk to relax, speaking softly to ease the tension. Her words made Murabashi laugh, and the Blues smiled along. She cherished the friendship that was gradually developing between them. Then, the Golden Man, now dressed in his costume, he went out into the city and helped the people with various tasks. He received much praise for lifting heavy objects and helping people in need. The children excitedly greeted him as he passed by. One boy even asked him to come help out at the baseball game that evening. He smiled and agreed. Unexpectedly, Reach received an alert. A warning about the appearance of a villain in the city was issued. She quickly informed Blues, causing her considerable anxiety. Panic spread as they realized the villain was only 2 kilometers away, and he is approaching at a rapid pace. While the Golden Man was still helping people, the villain suddenly appeared and attacked him. He was called Sal Chow. He wore a hoodie, and he had hands that were as transparent as glass. Approach and identify him immediately. It must be acknowledged that Sal Chow is an incredibly powerful villain, as evidenced by his ice skating skills, which explains why he arrived so quickly. Evacuation order launched. Ask everyone to leave the building. Sal Chow faced off against 2 rivals and turned the place into his ice cream shop. Accept the challenge. And the game needed to end early because he was busy playing baseball. This made Sal Chow force an uncomfortable smile. A tense atmosphere prevailed. Everyone watched the confrontation from a distance. What they need to do now is clean up the area and let the protagonist take responsibility for everything afterward. The villain, with a sinister grin, challenges him to try and keep up with his pace, and the battle officially begins. Sal Chow unleashed a barrage of attacks, but the Golden Man remained unharmed. He easily deflected each blow. Sal Chow boasted arrogantly about his strength and speed. He tried to demonstrate his dominance, which surprised the Golden Man somewhat. He secretly admitted that Sal Chow was more than just a figure skater. Moreover, he was a seasoned warrior. The Golden Man realizes the villain's true power. The Golden Man stepped forward without hesitation and lifted a massive pillar from a nearby building. This led to widespread destruction. Objects, furniture, and even cups were shattered in the chaos. Sal Chow tried to corner the Golden Man. He claimed that wherever he moved, a thin layer of ice would cling to him, making escape impossible. The Golden Man remained calm, simply replying, "This isn't the kind of ice that breaks easily." His composure enraged Sal Chow, who launched an even more ferocious attack, even throwing an entire building at him. Blues and Reach were horrified to witness that scene. They weren't sure if the Golden Man could withstand this level of reckless destruction. Amidst the thick smoke and dust, the scene gradually became clearer. The Golden Man stood firm on his 2 feet. Below him, the defeated Sal Chow. Even though the villain had lost, the Golden Man still extended his hand, ready to help him get back on his feet. After the battle, the Golden Man woke up in the hospital. He is still in the process of recovering. Reach stood by the bed, half-jokingly asking if he had lost his memory again, teasing him about being injured right after his first battle. Reach admitted that the villain suffered almost no significant damage, because in the end, he was the one who saved him after the match. Meanwhile, Sal Chow is now in police custody. There's a message for the Golden Man. He acknowledges his failure. Sal Chow expresses admiration for the Golden Man's dedication. He acknowledges that protecting everyone, including the villain, is admirable, but advises him to also take better care of himself. At the hospital, Reach praised the Golden Man. She declared that he was the greatest hero of this era. With a mischievous grin, Blues teased Reach, suggesting she was behaving like a thunder. The Golden Man, confused by the term, he asked what it meant but didn't wait for an answer. Instead, he quickly got out of bed, eager to go to the baseball game he'd promised to attend. Reach commented on his incredible speed of recovery, while Blues observed him with a slight smile, acknowledging that he might be reckless but a good person. The professor then informed the team that the base needed maintenance and cleaning. Therefore, everyone would have to leave the base temporarily. The professor explained that this process involved adjusting and maintaining the base, an unavoidable step. The team members were surprised by this sudden announcement. But Reach, who had anticipated the situation, seized the opportunity to pull the entire team aside. She revealed the real reason behind this decision. They wanted to ensure that every trace of the real Murabashi would be completely erased from the base. She further explained that the current Golden Man, being confined to the base, had been asking too many questions about the past, making the situation awkward. To resolve this, the team decided to send him away for a short period, giving him the necessary space to make important adjustments. The professor suggested booking a hotel room for the Golden Man. The Blues proposed a more personalized solution. She suggested that the Golden Man stay at her house instead of a hotel. He was initially a little surprised, but eventually he agreed to the offer. The professor understood the situation. He approved and allowed them to leave the base. On their way to the Blues house, they walked together through the streets, heading towards her house. The Golden Man is still adapting to his new environment. He appeared curious, quietly observing his surroundings with a discreet interest. Upon entering the Blues house, they were greeted by a scene of chaos. Clothes scattered everywhere and many items in disarray. Blues quickly apologized for the mess, explaining that her busy schedule had left her no time to clean up. The Golden Man, with his tall stature, he accidentally bumped his head on the low door frame. This made the Blues laugh and comment on his height. She added that the base's spacious design may have prevented him from realizing this before, but now, in the smaller space of her home, that became more apparent. Still feeling guilty about the inconvenience, Blues explained that her home was much smaller than the base. Nevertheless, she warmly welcomed the Golden Man, trying to make him feel more comfortable in the limited space. Blues offered to prepare a meal for the Golden Man. Even though he wasn't actually hungry, he still agreed to her proposal. Blues quickly prepared a simple meal with frozen meatballs. Then they both sat down to eat. During the meal, Blues watched the Golden Man eat with great relish. Noticing his enthusiasm for the food, Blues reassured him not to be shy and to eat as much as he wanted. As the conversation progressed, the Golden Man curiously asked if he used to eat that much before losing his memory. Blues smiled. She replied that he always had a big appetite, confirming that it was part of his nature. After meals, Blues led the Golden Man to the living room, where she showed him an article in the newspaper. The article mentioned an influential person who had publicly expressed their support for him. The Golden Man read the article attentively, but maintained a humble demeanor, seemingly unconcerned about the public attention. Then he went into the kitchen with Blues to help wash the dishes, much to her surprise. Despite his advanced design and superior abilities, he proactively wanted to help, even with the simplest tasks. This made Blues reflect on the nature of the Golden Man. Despite his incredible strength, he remained humble and sincere in his actions. However, he doesn't seem to remember his past clearly. The Golden Man is still able to adapt and learn everyday skills. As night falls, the Golden Man decided to take a shower. Blues, with a thoughtful gesture, warned him about the unreliable hot water system in her house. She explained that the water temperature can fluctuate erratically between hot and cold, which can sometimes be uncomfortable. Afterward, as they both prepared to go to bed, Blues settled down in his room. But in the middle of the night, Blues woke up, and she noticed that the Golden Man's room door was open. Worried, she got out of bed to check. When she entered his room, she discovered he wasn't there. After searching the entire house, she was surprised to find him curled up inside a closet, fast asleep. Blues' surprise. But she also found the sight somewhat amusing. She decided to lie down beside him and gently begin a conversation. She wondered where he really came from, who he was, and she tried to understand more about the person he had become. Recalling his actions and manners, Blues began to express her admiration. She started listing the Golden Man's most admirable qualities: his hawk-like vigilance, his unwavering faith in others, and his ability to express emotions genuinely. She didn't forget to mention his love of food, his aversion to bathing, and he has a habit of curling up in cramped spaces. It made him look just like an adorable puppy. As her story gradually died down, the Blues also drifted off to sleep, quietly drifting into a world of dreams. In the Golden Man's dream, he stood alone in a desolate, gloomy place. Despite calling out the Blues' name, she didn't show up. Instead, he found himself surrounded by mysterious entities, dark, gloomy shadows. Their bodies were as black as tar, and wearing strange hats on their heads only added to the unpredictable and mysterious atmosphere. Confused, the Golden Man asked the shadowy entities who they were and why they were there. However, before they could answer, he suddenly woke up. He was still reeling from the strange dream. Shortly after, the Blues received a call from Reach informing them of a serious crisis. An experimental biological weapon from a pharmaceutical company, a plant-derived entity called Burrow 47, has gone out of control. This weapon was created by genetically modifying the guaiacum plant. This makes it enormous in size. It is extremely heat-resistant and virtually indestructible thanks to its specially reinforced shell. Currently, it is causing serious devastation in the region, becoming a terrifying threat. The situation is extremely urgent, and they need to act immediately. The Golden Man looked out the window and saw the giant plant weapon wreaking havoc in the nearby area. Without hesitation, he turned to Blues, reassuring her that he would be back soon to finish the meal with her. In a flash, he donned the Golden Man costume, the symbol of the city's protector. Then he jumped out the window. He headed straight towards danger with absolute determination. His enthusiasm and courage shine through as he confronts the colossal plant weapon head-on in a dramatic and tense confrontation. With a powerful attack, the Golden Man unleashed his full strength, destroyed biological weapons with a single strike. From the base, the professor and his team monitored the battle remotely, witnessing the overwhelming dominance of the Golden Man. They were astonished by his strength and performance, and couldn't help but praise him for having defeated such a dangerous opponent in such a short time. Blues observed the battle from a safe distance. Impressed by his courage and fighting ability, she gradually realized that perhaps the Golden Man was not simply a replacement for the real Murabashi. He could be something more than that. Another villain emerges from the shadows, a mysterious figure clad in all-black attire. She had been quietly observing the Golden Man, watching his outstanding performance. With a mischievous grin, she muttered that she and the Golden Man shared many similarities. The mysterious woman begins to devise a plan for the inevitable confrontation, fully aware that her path and that of the Golden Man will sooner or later intersect. Tensions escalate, forcing both her team and the Golden Man's to brace themselves for the challenges ahead. At the base, Reach assembled the team, bringing with her a surveillance video she had collected just the day before. Although the video was blurry and the figures indistinct, she pointed out one crucial detail. For a brief moment, a person dressed in traditional Japanese attire appeared. This person was carrying a jet-powered weapon. The professor immediately became visibly worried upon hearing this. He insisted that it could only mean one thing. The most powerful villain they had ever known had arrived in New York. The entire team fell silent, acutely aware of the danger posed by this threat. Meanwhile, Murabashi was on his way back from a grueling battle. As he walked, his mind drifted back to the strange dream he had had the night before. In that dream, he saw a man, and gradually a terrifying truth emerged. That man was him before he lost his memory. This realization stirred a wave of unease within him. He wondered to himself, what was he like before his memory was erased? Was he ever a hero? If so, was he a truly good hero, or had he made questionable decisions? Murabashi couldn't shake the feeling that he might not have been someone admired before. Perhaps that's why his current team never mentioned his past. Maybe they knew things about him that they thought he didn't want to hear. Or perhaps they simply didn't trust him enough to bring up his old habits. Still lost in thought, he accidentally bumped into a young girl. The person is intently looking at a pedestrian navigation guide in New York. She seemed confused and anxious. So he stopped and asked if she needed any help. The girl explained that she was trying to find a specific location, but couldn't remember the exact way, which made her feel uneasy. Noticing her anxiety, Murabashi offered to help, saying that he had spent the past few days studying the streets of New York and could help her find her way. With the new information he had, Murabashi reassured the girl that he would take her there. They both set off, and soon they were standing in front of the restaurant. Murabashi decided to stay. They ordered burgers and enjoyed their meal together. The girl brightened up considerably, eagerly sharing that this was the first time she'd had a decent meal after a long and tiring journey. Murabashi, intrigued by her excitement, asked if she enjoyed traveling. She replied enthusiastically, revealing that she loved exploring and frequently traveled throughout Asia and Europe. She shared that New York has always fascinated her, calling it the City of Freedom. She said that it's a city unlike any she's ever been to because of its diversity, vibrant energy, and iconic landmarks, making it her favorite destination. Murabashi was curious about how she perceived the city. Murabashi suggests that perhaps she still doesn't truly understand what makes New York unique. In response, the young woman offered a surprising and insightful explanation, comparing New York to other major cities around the world. She observed that many cities maintain public order by relying on military force, imposing numerous restrictions on the movement and behavior of citizens. This makes those cities less free. But New York is different. Instead of relying on military intervention, the city is protected by a hero, the Golden Man. This unique system has helped New York avoid many of the restrictions faced by other cities, maintaining its title as the City of Freedom. Her passion for New York's openness was evident in every word. Her words awakened a memory in Murabashi. He recalled a conversation with the professor who had once said that without someone like the Golden Man to protect New York, the city would face unimaginable dangers. The girl's thoughts seemed to mirror those very words, as she expressed regret about the current state of the world. She pondered, wondering why the world had become so chaotic, why there was so much conflict, and why some places enjoyed freedom while others were so tightly controlled. Then she turned to Murabashi, asking if he had ever faced many villains, showing her keen awareness of the dangers heroes like him faced daily. Before he could answer, his phone rang, signaling an emergency call. Realizing he had to leave immediately, Murabashi stood up. The girl also stood up, her eyes filled with gratitude, expressing her sincere thanks for helping her find the restaurant and for spending time eating with her. Murabashi humbly replied that it was nothing, trying to downplay his role. The girl teased him, saying that his humility was almost disappointing. Murabashi was a little embarrassed. He admitted that he always carried a persistent feeling of insecurity about himself. He confessed that helping others was his way of trying to alleviate that insecurity, but sometimes it makes him feel like a hypocrite. The girl burst out laughing, surprised by his rare honesty. She remarked that it was strange to hear someone openly admit to being a hypocrite. But then she reassured him, pointing out that whatever his motives, he had genuinely helped her. The girl shared a profound philosophy, saying that even if someone does a good deed with ulterior motives, it is still a positive act. She went on to say that intention doesn't always diminish the value of an action. Murabashi listened carefully. He took her point of view to heart. The girl shook his hand. She expressed her gratitude once again before he left. The girl watched his figure disappear into the distance, her heart filled with thoughts of Murabashi. After Murabashi left, the girl quietly took a sip from the glass of water she had ordered. Her mind drifted back to the past, to something that had happened that she wished she could change. Her thoughts evoked a profound sense of regret, a death that had changed everything. She believes that if that person were still alive, the world today might be different. Meanwhile, a group of local youths approached her, noticing she was sitting alone. They called her Nei-chan, started teasing her, and invited her to join them for lunch. They sarcastically implied that her date had abandoned her, which upset her. She secretly wished Murabashi would return to rescue her from this situation, but she maintained her composure. Speaking firmly, she said she had already eaten and asked them to leave her alone. Meanwhile, Murabashi continued walking, leaving the encounter behind. Back with his team, he found them discussing a new threat to the city. The professor began describing the villain they were about to face. A swordsman of extraordinary skill, wielding a special weapon called the Jet Muramasa, a jet-powered sword with destructive power. According to the professor, this villain has repeatedly tried to contact the Golden Man, as if he were seeking a direct encounter. Murabashi was surprised to learn that she had even used social media to contact him, an unusual move for a villain. Stunned, he asked why someone so dangerous could so easily access him through a public platform. His question was met only with pensive glances from his teammates. No one spoke immediately, perhaps because they felt a sense of responsibility. Murabashi wondered if he had inadvertently drawn the villain to the city, but the professor quickly reassured him that it wasn't his fault. Iwak, another member of the team, spoke up, revealing that the villain had a history of visiting New York, frequently, almost like a tourist. Although she doesn't usually cause trouble, there have been some serious incidents of vandalism. One of the most striking examples is when she destroyed an entire residential area simply because the drink she ordered wasn't to her liking. Murabashi suddenly remembered that he had read about this event in a New York guidebook. He realized that this incident occurred in the same area where a meteorite had fallen the previous year. The professor confirmed that this was indeed the case, and linked the event to a notorious villain named Saint. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the girl dealt with the group of young men with surprising ease. She pulled out a small weapon, manipulated it skillfully, causing them to panic and flee immediately. Afterward, she shifted her attention to a nearby poster. The image of the Golden Man is clearly printed on it. She stared at the poster, lost in thought, seemingly searching for a way to meet this mysterious hero. At the same time, the villain the team had been discussing finally made her move. She appeared right in the middle of the city, immediately attracting attention. The professor quickly informed Murabashi, warning him of the enemy's presence. Without hesitation, Murabashi immediately put on the Golden Man's costume. They are fully aware of how serious this situation is. Murabashi prepared himself for the confrontation. He knew that this was no ordinary opponent. The villain he is about to face is known as the Oiran Trooper, a legendary female swordsman incredibly dangerous and with a fearsome reputation. He clenched his fists, trying to reassure himself before the inevitable battle. Meanwhile, the professor began explaining to the team the enemy they were about to face. He emphasized that the Oiran Trooper was considered the strongest swordsman, a threat far exceeding any enemy they had ever encountered. To illustrate the extent of her danger, the professor revealed that she had mastered a devastating sword technique called one-hit kill. This technique was capable of cleaving through space, making the Oiran Trooper a nearly invincible threat. The Golden Man worried about the prospect of a direct confrontation, Murabashi asked if there was any way to avoid a confrontation with an Oiran trooper. The professor replied seriously, explaining that an Oiran trooper was like a natural disaster, an unstoppable catastrophe that destroyed everything in her path. However, he added that if they didn't directly confront her, didn't conflict with her, or hinder her plans, there was still a small chance of avoiding a fight. The professor also warned that if the situation necessitates confrontation, or if battle breaks out, they had to prioritize safety and retreat immediately, even if that meant leaving the city. Cherish your life, he emphasized sternly, making it clear that anyone who underestimated this enemy would pay with their own life. Murabashi returns to the team members, and the professor mentions Murabashi's current state, pointing out that he is still acting as a hero without truly understanding who he is. By this point, Murabashi had faced many enemies, but none could match the Oiran trooper. According to the professor, this villain was on a completely different level, an unprecedented threat. He stressed that they needed to inform Murabashi of the danger he faced before it was too late. Iwak completely agreed, acknowledging that preparing for the worst-case scenario is essential. Meanwhile, Reach, another member of the team, reported to the professor on the evacuation situation. She stated that all city residents had been safely moved to underground shelters. She emphasized that they had warned the entire city about the potential threat, following the principle of better to be overly cautious than to regret it later. The Golden Man has now donned his heroic costume. He entered the city determined to confront the villain directly. Shortly afterward, he saw Oiran troopers approaching. Standing firm, he confidently introduced himself. The Golden Man, the hero of New York. Contrary to expectations, the Oiran trooper simply smiled and greeted him with a surprisingly friendly attitude. She pulled out her phone, calmly remarking how delightful it was to see the Golden Man in the city at night, as if the encounter were a surreal moment to her. Then she raised her phone to take a picture of him, jokingly suggesting she should post it on Instagram. At base, the professor and the entire team were watching the encounter anxiously. They hoped that the Golden Man would only exchange a few words with the Oiran trooper, then leave peacefully, avoiding any unnecessary conflict. The Oiran trooper continued his conversation with the Golden Man. She asked him which filter he should choose to make his photos look the best. She appeared extremely relaxed and calm, showing no signs of hostility whatsoever. Suddenly, she changed the subject, saying she would film the video later, because she first had some things to take care of. The Golden Man noticed the seriousness in her words and asked her what she was referring to. Immediately, the entire team at base sensed the escalating danger, a wave of tension engulfing them all. The Oiran trooper calmly revealed that she had a list of people she intended to kill, leaving the Golden Man speechless with surprise. But what shocked him even more, she was the same girl he had met earlier, the one Murabashi had helped find his way and shared a burger with. The Oiran trooper began recounting her vendettas, talking about what had happened after her lunch. She had been harassed by a group of people, causing her immense distress. Not stopping there, she complained that a cashier had refused to accept iPay as a payment method, which she considered an unforgivable insult. Her tone became more aggressive as she listed a series of similar incidents, ultimately concluding that New York didn't deserve to be called the best tourist destination. Noticing her growing anger, the Golden Man tried to explain. He calmly argued that killing those who had upset her was not a justifiable solution. However, his attempts at persuasion only further enraged the villain. In a fit of rage, the Oiran trooper unleashed a powerful blow towards the Golden Man, emphatically declaring that he had no right to interfere in her affairs and should mind his own business. At the base, the professor was more worried than ever, and he urgently ordered the Golden Man to retreat immediately. The professor stressed that the Oiran trooper was currently in an agitated state, making the situation extremely dangerous. He reassured the Golden Man that the team would handle the evacuation of the remaining residents, and urgently urged him to leave while there was still a chance. Despite the professor's urgent warnings, the Golden Man remained steadfast. He declared he would stay and fight, explaining that he couldn't be sure the Oiran troopers would limit their violence to their initial targets. As a protector of the city, he felt a responsibility to safeguard all citizens and could not turn his back and run away. Iwak listened to the Golden Man's decision and voiced his support. He agreed that Murabashi's instincts were correct. As tensions escalate, the villain begins to unleash their full power. With a series of sword strikes, she created shockwaves of catastrophic destructive power. It spread throughout the region with devastating destructive power. These shockwaves possess superior destructive power. This clearly demonstrates her overwhelming power. The intensity of the attack was so great that it shocked the entire team at the base, as they witnessed the chaotic scene unfolding from a distance. Amidst the devastating destruction, the villain provokes the Golden Man, challenging him to see if he has the courage to stand firm or turn and flee. Blues, a member of the team, assessed that, faced with such overwhelming power, the most important thing for the Golden Man was to preserve his life and retreat immediately. Despite the enormous risks, he remained steadfast, determined to fight to the end. He realized that the villain's swordsmanship was incredibly formidable, especially at medium and long range, where she completely dominated the battlefield. To neutralize his opponent's advantage, he decided to close the distance and engage in close combat. The Golden Man launched a full-force attack, trying to get close enough to deliver the finishing blow. However, her speed and skill far exceeded all expectations. With a clean and ruthless movement, she easily blocked his attack. Then she counterattacked fiercely, knocking him down instantly. The Golden Man fell, unconscious, his body sprawled on the pavement. The professor witnessed this tragic outcome, admitting that it was inevitable when facing the most powerful villain. His words were heavy with gravity, emphasizing the extreme danger they were facing.